Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coast Files, your podcast for ocean mysteries and true crime. I'm Chantel.
I'm Lindsay.
I'm Megan.
Hello, and cheers again to you guys.
Cheers. Almost Cinco de Mayo.
But
Yes,
in
almost.
celebration, we've decided to
if you're
have
listening to this,
a drink.
It's way old.
And
It's
I'm
also
actually
Friday.
drinking a margarita because it's on theme for Cinco de Mayo. And it's delicious. This is like a canned cocktail that I picked up, and they're not a sponsor, but they're called Austin's Cocktails, and it's like the
They
best
could be.
canned cocktail I've ever had. So
Yeah?
future sponsor.
How's
It's made
the
in Austin,
sweetness
Texas.
level?
It's not too sweet, which is
Ooh,
what I like.
okay.
And this one has
Yes.
lime, bergamot orange. I'm probably saying that totally wrong.
No, you're not.
No,
you're saying
no.
it right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
are.
triple sec. So
Good.
very good. I
I
highly
love
recommend.
canned cocktails. I'm not sure when those started becoming more of a thing, but
You
God
got
bless them.
You're the reason that they're a very big thing for me now, Megan, because remember we went to your place like a few years ago and you had this big cooler of all the canned cocktails, and I just
actually, it's my pink Frigidaire mini fridge.
oh yeah, right.
That-
you bought it
that
for our little gathering.
Well, because I've always wanted one. To me, that's a major flex. You know, I had one in university, and it just makes me feel so cool. Like, oh, mini fridge. Doesn't take much for me to feel cool, I guess.
you went up a few cool factors like after
Good,
purchasing.
good.
so.
And I dropped way too much money that I probably could have put towards, debt repayment. But there we are.
You're
And I
debt
feel
free
the-
now, so
I think it was after I was debt free too, so it wasn't so bad. And I just filled the fridge with whatever fun cocktail can I could have. I actually have a cider in there too, which I think about you guys. You guys are my
Oh.
cider girls.
Well, that was like
Yes.
that time that we had the girls' weekend in our apartment, and remember our bar was just like full of cider cans. I think we bought
Yeah.
like basically a 2-4 of different ciders back when they
Yeah.
were like
I love
$1.60 a
cider.
can, not $3
Whoa.
something now.
but they were that cheap.
Yeah, they were.
I should have
pretty cheap
drank
back
way
then.
more. I'm
I
disappointed
know.
in myself.
We did not take
What a deal.
advantage.
My drink of choice is a Smirnoff creamsicle. I can't read the can. I think it's called a creamsicle blast. I don't know. I don't feel blasted, but it's a very delicious creamsicle flavor. So
Okay, that kind of
This is our
reminds me of
first
the
time
things-
having a drink for the.
It
while
is
we're
on
recording
on
this.
camera.
Yeah,
no, this is my first beverage ever.
yeah. Hopefully, I'm allowed to show cans of alcohol on YouTube. I guess.
We can just
can't see
blur
why
that
you
out.
wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
I
That would be
mind
like
a
being
big
like,
dump.
oh, I have a Nike shirt on and I have to blur it out. We're not like making money off of the brand, so
Yeah.
That's true. Well, yeah. If we have to blur it
Chantel,
out,
what are
you can.
you drinking? You have wine, I think.
yeah, I have this. It's like this semi-dry type of ice wine. It's-
ice wine.
Yeah, because ice
No,
wine's normally very
I-
sweet, right?
I know, but this is a dry one, so it's actually
Okay.
very low. I think it only has like 2 grams of sugar or something like that, which is lower than a lot of wines, just regular wines. And it's just it's nice. I also think it's higher percentage because one glass of this can sometimes get me a little.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, from what I
So-
understand, usually higher alcohol percentage means less sugar, right? Usually.
Yeah, I think so. So anyways, it's really good because normally I don't like ice wines either. I am like,
well, if you're liking it, then good.
that's all that matters at the end of the day. So
Well, as many people say, a good wine is wine that you like.
yeah,
People get all caught up on labels and price. No, but people
we
are
were,
like,
we were
oh,
talking
yeah,
about
that's
that the other day, actually, about like we can't, one day when we have money, I want to like buy a really expensive bottle of wine and a really cheap bottle of wine that I like and just be like, let's see if I can notice the difference. Just get Vadim to pour them for me, blind taste this crap and see if I notice a difference.
Sometimes they
the-
even do that as a group, like just for fun.
But
Yeah,
I
little wine
think I
tasting.
learned recently on Wine and Crime actually that it's not about the price of the wine doesn't necessarily mean much. It just means that it might be a grape varietal that's harder to get and harder to grow, and that's why it's priced more than like varietals that are very easy to come by.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed that my personal wine taste is not that expensive. Sometimes I've had like a, $30, $40 bottle of wine. I'm like, oh, I kind of like that $12 bottle of wine more. So
Or
Honestly.
if the taste is like pretty comparable, then I'll always get the $13 bottle. There's one that has a chicken, a dollar bottle. There's one that has a chicken on it, and it's from France, and I get it all the time. It is $13.
I know which one you're talking about.
It's
You know
good.
what I really like, and I've gotten hooked on since we were in Portugal, is a lot of the Portugal wines. And they're like
have
anywhere
great
from
wine.
$9 to $15 a bottle. And they're so good. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm happy with this.
That's what I like about
I
Trader
wish I
Joe's
was
here is
having
like
wine,
you
but-
get cheap wine and
Yes.
it's good. And I guess they sometimes get the leftovers from more expensive batches and they just rebrand
Okay.
it as the Trader Joe's brand.
That is called
and-
private label
Oh.
branding, which is
Oh,
like
thank you, Megan.
so you can get like no name ketchup or President's Choice ketchup,
Mhm.
and I think in this case it's not Heinz, but it could be like a really high quality ketchup that you would normally pay, like a real label. So
Yeah.
what's the other ketchup? French's. There's like one ketchup. There's Heinz.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a bad example, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Hun? No. Hun?
Hunts.
Hun-
That's
Huntsman?
just tomato. Maybe that's just tomato
Maybe it's, yeah, I don't know.
sauce.
Either way, private label branding means that one company makes one thing really, really well, and maybe they mostly do this label that everyone knows, but then store brand. So like
Okay.
Our Compliments, or what's the one for Walmart? I forget the one for
I don't
Walmart.
know. I know
but then
in
Walmart
Whole
can
Foods,
buy it in
yeah,
packages.
365 is their.
It's not even
store
get into
brand.
Whole Foods. Whole Foods is just
That's what I
Crazy
got
prices.
here.
Honestly, some things
It's
at Whole
not
Foods,
that
though, aren't that crazy priced when you
bad.
compare them to a lot of grocery prices now. It's
their
like
bar soap. They have really nice bar soap.
their
I
paper
actually,
towel.
it's
Really?
not that bad. I actually find Whole Foods depending. I go to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's primarily. Trader Joe's for a lot of my like boxed things, like
Yeah, pantry
pastas,
stuff.
like non-perishables.
Mhm.
And then Whole Foods is really great for like fresh produce. And I was actually talking to someone today who used to work for Whole Foods, like in the corporate office, and she was saying that they actually have some of the best quality produce. You can, if you store it correctly, it can last a long time. Where some of the other stores, it's like a couple days. You're like, what's going on? Like my
Oh, that's
That's
pisses
fair.
me off.
But
Well,
I
and
went
you
to Loblaws
You
recently.
spend so much money on Loblaws include. You spend so much money on like strawberries, and then there's
Yeah.
like one that's moldy that you don't see, and it just infects everything else.
Yeah, I went to
Yeah.
Loblaws recently, though, and like considering that you're paying more for most of your stuff, like I said, some of the other stuff is just on par. So it's just like whatever's easy to get to for us more so than anything. And my vegetables went off so quickly. I was shocked. I was like, I buy stuff from this little store across the street called Kitchen Table for the same price as Loblaws, and it lasts me forever. But like this stuff, anyways.
That makes me mad.
Me too. Oh, I forgot to take
Yeah.
my vitamin. I thought I took my vitamin, but it's sitting here. Could it be a vitamin from another day?
Ritual Vitamins, feel free to get at us. Can you
I'm
tell
gonna
them we're
take this.
desperate? Can you just verbally say your last will and testament just in case? Tell us about your vitamin.
My alarm's going off. I'm gonna keep the vitamin inside. I might just be double vitamin today. We'll see.
Super vitamin.
Okay, ladies, let's get off of our vitamin grocery store wine podcast and
We have so many more
Into the
podcasts
topic
now these days. Yeah,
get into
I'm so excited
today's
for this.
topic. Okay,
What are we
so
talking about?
today? I'm gonna continue on our Lost at Sea series, and we're gonna talk about Cleopatra's tomb. Which
So I know nothing about the context of what you're going to talk about. I know about
No.
Cleopatra, like a little.
Yeah.
I
but
bet
when
you
you're
don't
like-
even know the half of what I'm about
No.
to tell you about Cleopatra, though.
I'll
'Cause,
tell you, I
like,
know. I probably know less than half of
Yeah.
what you're going to say.
Yeah, I mean, the tomb's never been found, so obviously
I didn't know it was lost.
So we'll get into that. You ladies will have the first photo open there. So that's what we're going to start with. Cleopatra.
And just a reminder, we are going to have these photos on the video, but also
videos,
we're
yeah.
going to, whatever we can post on the website, we will.
Yeah.
And whenever we can't, we will definitely have on Instagram. So if you want to check this out while you're listening or after you listen. I'll
And
have
don't
it all.
forget, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. Put that
Hi.
little dingy bell on, you know?
If
Get
you're
us-
looking
get us
on
up-
YouTube, we're waving.
and downvote our trolls comments.
Or join in and humble us. I don't know.
Whatever you're feeling. It's okay. Engagement is
Yeah.
engagement.
That's right.
Yeah,
Just
true.
like the video at least, please.
Yeah. Be semi-nice because like some of us are criers. So
Megan.
Sometimes trolls
I-
will make
yeah.
me cry.
No,
I
that's fair.
I make myself cry more than trolls do.
That's fair.
yes.
So this first photo that they're looking at is just this beautiful rendition of Cleopatra the VII. A
Stunning.
name
Oh.
that means glory of her fatherland in Greek. And she was very much painted throughout history as being nothing more than a seductress who used her beauty to enslave men of power to bend to her will. Which, if that were true, there's nothing wrong with that. You go, girl, get what you need, however you need to get it. But the actual history is so much more, and that brief summary is nothing more than a reductive Roman propaganda. History is often written by the victors, making the losers seem unfit to rule at best. And that is what happened to Cleopatra. So
I'm so
okay.
intrigued by all of this. I'm pumped.
Yeah, I actually feel like Cleopatra, like everyone's heard of her, but I don't know that much about her. I know a little bit about
most things that you hear is that she, married some men.
Caesar and like
she was married to J-Lo's ex-husband. That I know.
Yes.
Okay,
And
we're gonna get into
something-
all of her marriages. Don't
And
worry.
Is she
something
actually
about-
J-Lo? Is that her real identity? Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure.
J-Lo wishes.
Yeah.
Sorry, J-Lo, don't come for us. Oh my god, take it back. Jalapeno,
J-Lo
take
could
it back.
definitely be. She could play Cleopatra for sure.
However, if J-Lo downloaded our video, that would be the highlight of my life. I'd be like, oh my god, J-Lo knows
But
we
what
exist.
would
I
be
would
even
spread that
more?
everywhere.
What would be even better would be if she upvoted our video. So that's
Fair. Let's
tell
aim
her
for
how
that
much.
one.
And also, let's just say how good
We
is
love-
that song "Get Right"? Remember that was like 2008. Get
Yeah,
Right,
I like Jenny from the Block still. I think it's still a banger.
classic.
I
and
still
her and
like
Ben are back together. It's
Waiting
like full
for
circle.
tonight.
I know. It actually makes it so much more meaningful. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give us a brief history lesson here about Cleopatra herself, because to not would be an absolute disservice to this brilliant woman that she actually was. I got the majority of my information from a book called Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. And honestly, I cannot recommend this book enough. I had a hard time putting it down to write my notes. I was like, oh, right, I'm not just reading this. I'm
Oh, I
getting
love to hear
information
that.
from this.
That's so good though.
I haven't finished it yet. I had to end up like jumping from certain parts to get more of the information that I specifically needed for this. But like, it's so good. She has like a lot of history she pulls from different sources to try and paint the actual picture of Cleopatra, as well as she's like a little drop of sarcasm. So it's like, it's good.
So we would all get along then.
Yes, we definitely like it. So
Do you have the
a
book
lot.
to share with us, or is it digital?
I got it digitally, but we can definitely,
can
it will
flash
be
it.
obviously
Okay.
in the references. I will show a picture of it in the video, but it's Cleopatra, A Life. So good. And yeah, it'll be in our references on the webpage. So if anybody
Awesome.
can't remember that, you can go and look afterwards and it'll be there.
Okay.
So a lot of Egyptian history was lost through time because it didn't exactly have the best historians at the time, and most would write from memory or centuries after events happened through word of mouth. Or like I said,
the
was-
Bible.
Yeah, exactly, like the Bible. Or was
And I probably wrote on like
over-
stone or something.
Some of it was stone. There were a lot of scrolls and
hieroglyphic-
things back then, though.
Hieroglyphic.
I might have to say
I
that
know
word
this
later. I
word.
should
Why
know.
can't I say it out
That
loud?
was like me trying to say
The margaritas kicked in.
marbled columns. Marbled columns. Takes all my brain power.
It does.
Hieroglyphics. There we go.
There we go. I'll get you to say that later when I need to say that word too.
Okay.
And in fact, a lot of the history that we actually know about Cleopatra was written by a man named Plutarch, and he wasn't even born until 46 CE. So like 100 or so years after Cleopatra's death.
Wow. Never
yeah.
met her. So, but
No.
he's the
But
one
knows-
writing it.
knows the story.
Yeah.
So Cleopatra the VII was born in 69 BCE and ruled Egypt during the time of the Ptolemaic Empire. This was during the Hellenistic period, which is the Greek period. That spanned from 323 BCE to 30 BCE. It started with the death of Alexander the Great, which happened like seconds after he took over the Persian-run areas, to the death of Cleopatra. This empire was founded by the Macedonian general Ptolemy I Soter, who was the apparent next in line to Alexander the Great due to distant family lineage. And he also had like this kingship with Alexander the Great throughout the years. Fun fact, Cleopatra the VII wasn't actually the 7th. She was the 6th, but it just seems that someone lost count along the way.
So after 5, like, it's fair game.
Cleopatra.
Well, not
It
to
is
mention there was
interest-
like 3 main names for women at the time. One that starts with a B that I can't remember, Arsinoe and Cleopatra. So like they would kind of like run through
Oh,
these.
really?
And,
Okay.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, Sarah, Jessica, Ashley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's
Um,
always the top 3.
there we go. And they were
It is
ABC.
interesting too because like back then there would be like these lines of succession, but so many people die because of illnesses and things. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, we got to figure out like
That is
having
also something that is also
being the
something
8th
that I
in line,
wonder.
you might,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, we're gonna get into this family tree actually right now. 'Cause
Okay,
it's a little
okay.
messed up.
Is the family tree a straight line? I mean, it's Egyptian. So.
You're gonna learn.
Okay.
Well, remember they're Greek Macedonian. They are not Egyptian.
Oh, I already forgot that.
Yeah.
So Damien's
Okay.
related to Cleopatra.
Possibly, and Alexander the Great.
That would make sense if you knew
Yeah.
him. He loves eyeliner.
Yeah. Megan's husband is related to Cleopatra on record.
This is kind of off topic, but it's
He should
related
put
to
that
what
on his
Chantel
resume.
just said. Oh, he does already. It's his distant relative. But there is so much that as like North Americans, you just do not learn about, probably any other place in the world. And I had no idea the connection between North Macedonia and Greece and how even that is contested. Like, you can't say Macedonia because there's Macedonia, like in Greece is all one big area. And the way it's divided up is just very complicated. And I had no idea.
Yeah,
And I probably wouldn't know if it wasn't for him.
the history is complicated in most places. So let's get into
Lots
some
of
more
words.
of it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So I'm gonna give you a little rundown of how eventually Cleopatra got her butt in that throne. The Ptolemy bloodline is full of 2 things: incest and murder. So approximately 10 of 15 Ptolemy marriages were between full brother and sister. They did this for simplicity's sake and to minimize the likelihood of the throne being claimed by in-laws. While
So science wasn't big back then.
no. While there weren't many documented deformities due to this close bloodline, which you think that there would be, it did make for a very strange family tree, kind of more like a bush, I guess, than a tree.
Bet your Thanksgiving was real awkward.
For instance, Cleopatra's grandmother married her uncle, so her father was also her brother-in-law. But
I've already checked out. I need pen and paper.
Yeah.
Oh,
does
you know
not
what?
compute.
Actually,
Did
what
they-
what I'll do? I'm gonna draw a family tree when we're done, and I'll post that as well.
oh my God, please, yes.
Yeah, if you
I
can
need
figure it
help.
out, I will be impressed. Did they
You
have
should
any
tell
like
send me her notes. Yeah,
did they have any like weird like things going on? Remember like there was this like royal
Habsburg
family
chin or
Habsburg,
whatever?
yeah, Habsburg chin. So like they just eventually like they got to
Oh.
the point where they couldn't like he couldn't the last person
I remember
was,
that.
like, could not have children.
kind of like pugs and a lot of like bulldogs.
So that's
Yeah,
what I mean.
he's
They
got
didn't really
children.
talk about a lot of deformities. I wasn't like, I think King Tut was known to be like have like a club foot or something like that. Like they didn't talk about that. There's not a lot of that's written about it. So I don't know how it worked, but it
Yeah.
tended to work.
Time machine.
But they did also follow a Macedonian custom, which was the practice of murdering and killing your family. So the Ptolemies really thrived at this. While keeping it all in the family was good at securing the family generational wealth, it also meant the sibling rivalry was at an all-time high.
especially when you're married to them.
Yes. Ptolemy the First married his half-sister, who tried to conspire against him with their sons, who Ptolemy the First eventually murdered. Women during this time were equals to male counterparts, and they knew it. So a lot of them ended up murdering and poisoning like brothers and husbands and things like that, just to kind of like either move on to somebody else or kind of have a ruling for a little while. Ptolemy the Fourth murdered his uncle, brother, and mother. And once his wife had given birth to their heir, he had her poisoned.
Holy shit, man.
Cleopatra's
Damn.
great-grandmother waged war against her parents and her children on 2 separate occasions. Cleopatra's great-great-aunt, Cleopatra the III, was the wife and niece of Ptolemy the VIII.
I am making this family tree. Okay.
Unfortunately, it's kind of gross, though.
It's gonna be more of like a web of.
It's gonna be fucked up.
I don't think it's gonna be a tree.
No. He did rape her when she was an adolescent, and he
my
ended up
God.
being married to both her and her mother at the same time.
Ew.
And Ptolemy the
Wow.
Eighth, they were like in this feud, him and his niece wife, And he ended up chopping their son into little pieces and delivering the body parts to his wife on her birthday. And once she composed herself, though, she publicly displayed the body parts
ever.
Yes.
Like,
she publicly displayed the body parts to the Alexandrians, and they went into an absolute rage. The couple,
as they should.
The couple eventually reconciled, and Ptolemy VIII continued to reign with his two warring mother and daughter queens.
Girl, leave him.
I'd like to think that even back then, people were like, all right, obviously they raged. Like, they knew this was wrong and messed up, but that just at the time they had no power to stop it, I guess.
Well, you're going to like this next one. Cleopatra's uncle murdered his wife, who was his half-sister and stepmother. But he underestimated how much she was adored by the Alexandrians and was lynched by a mob 18 days later. And his death is how Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, Aleuetes, I think I'm saying that right. I found like 3 different things. Inherited his seat in the throne.
This is so fucked up.
He was related to Ptolemy the 11th, but he was kind of seen as illegitimate. But at the time of Ptolemy the 11th's death, there was fear of a Roman overhaul. So they just wanted a butt in the seat as fast as possible. They did not care if he was illegitimate or not. So they went to Syria to bring him back so that he could take over the throne, so the throne would continue on with the lineage to Alexander the Great.
How did they
I'm impressed that you were able to even
illegitimate?
just piece this all together, Chantel. Like, this is it
was fun.
I'm already like, whoa.
How were they illegitimate? I think because he was I think if I remember correctly, it was his mother may have had him with somebody else, but like since everybody's kind of half related
someone
anyways,
outside the family that has no shared genealogy.
but like the mother was probably related in some way anyways. So
yeah, unless you're like currently like, you know, married, then they can question your legitimacy. But also they could question like, I remember like their Henry VIII called into like question legitimacy of his first daughter because he got remarried, and it's like, well, I was legit, like what's going on? So that was the whole like Mary Queen of Scots versus Elizabeth the First thing, because they're like, you know,
we have a lot of questionable things that come into this as well.
Let's dig in.
So when Cleopatra was just 13 years old, Ptolemy XII put in his will that Cleopatra and his sons should, and his son Ptolemy XIII would be the heir to the throne. This was kind of an unusual request to be like, listen, these are the two that I want, even though she was the older. Normally it did go to the sons first, but likely due to promise that Ptolemy XII saw in his daughter, even at such a young age, was the reason that he put this in his will. So Ptolemy XII died of natural causes at the age of 60 in 51 BCE. And Cleopatra at the time was 18 years old, and then she had to get married as Egyptian custom to her brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was 10.
Gross.
And
so wait, imagine being like, I hate my little brother, and then you get married to him.
She's 8 years older than him as well.
I feel like I've had that nightmare before.
That's like crazy. Like,
that's disgusting.
So it was custom. They got married, and convoluted family tree is a bit of an understatement. Here.
Even her father living to 60 is probably quite old for the
it was
time.
For the time. Yeah. So Cleopatra herself was very well read, to say the absolute least. Alexandria was essentially the knowledge capital of the world at the time, though, and it had a very famous library, which is the next picture there. And she had it all at her fingertips. Ptolemy the First.
She was smart then, right? She was able to read.
I'm getting into it. You're about to learn how freaking smart this woman was. And this is so glossed over in most of the history because, you know, Romans wanted to be like, but we're Romans and we're the best. Ptolemy the First founded this library. And he went as far as to seize all literature that was brought into Alexandria and would often have copies made of them and return the copies and keep the originals. He would offer rewards to those that could get him more text. It was said that they had about 500,000 plus scrolls in this place, but more realistically, it was like 100,000, which is still very impressive for the time. But they had things like Homer, back then, like the original Homer.
And we're
Like, it
still
was-
reading that today.
Yeah, exactly. This was
was
a place
just-
that people would brag that they studied at. The library was also attached to a state-subsidized research institution and museum. Teachers at the time, around like Egypt and things, were commonly underpaid and undervalued. Sounds
Like today.
familiar.
Yeah.
But
Some things don't
in Alexandria, the teachers were housed in luxury in tax-free places and fed in vast communal halls. So like they were well taken care of because they knew that this was very important to them. It was in the Alexandrian library that it was discovered that the sun is fixed and the earth rotates it. And Ulysses founded geometry in the Alexandria library. And that's just
Okay.
like a minor drop of things that happened at this library. Due to all of this knowledge and teachings that she received, she became a very captivating speaker, and she was an exceptional in her lineage. Cleopatra spoke 10 languages. That included her being the first in her family to learn Egyptian. You know, the language of the people that they're ruling over.
That's just so weird because I don't know any of this.
The 7 million people that they ruled over. She was the first to learn the language.
I just find that crazy because we are not taught, like, to me, she was Egyptian, born and raised. I guess her family tree is a ball and everyone's married to each other. But I had no idea. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah. So when she was described by most, she was described as like this breathtaking beauty. But it actually wasn't very common that things were written about her in that way back then. If they did mention beauty, it was more so a sparkle in her eyes, but it was also equally mentioned that her eloquence and charisma and how captivating she was. In fact, if you see renditions of her on coins, which is most likely the thing that we have closest to what she actually looks like, and statues, she's not this striking beauty. And there were other women of the time that would be described in that way, and Cleopatra really wasn't. So you can go to the next couple of photos. The first one's a statue and the next one's a painting. These are more likely what she probably really looked like.
Did she really have red hair?
She
I think
may
that's
have,
just the
yeah.
coloring of the
But that's
marble,
it.
maybe.
She is shown as having red
So it's-
hair in multiple
Oh,
times
really?
as well. To be
Oh,
honest, we
okay.
don't have a whole lot to go
I know
off
that
of.
they
What
used
she
to wear
actually
that
looked
one,
like.
yeah.
a lot.
Mm.
So, yeah, she looks like very normal.
Mhm.
She just
Yeah.
looked like kind of, Eastern European, really. I know that
Average.
it's
She
marble.
was very average looking, according to like what you
Well, in
could,
terms
what,
of
what we
looks.
have. One thing that everybody could agree upon is that Cleopatra was captivating in how she spoke and held herself. It was said that it was a pleasure to merely hear the sound of her voice and that she could easily flow from one language to another. So unlike most during her time, she was actually able to address nations without an interpreter, which, could also be good
a
for,
big
you never
move.
know when people are going to kind of be like, saying something that more is like for them as well. So she was able to do like everything just on her own, talking with people to make deals and like make peace and stuff like that. So, but don't forget, an educated woman is a dangerous one.
Put that in a bumper sticker.
So brother and sister are married at this time. And as we saw above, sibling rivalry was kind of known in the Ptolemies. So Ptolemy the 13th started to feel that he was getting shoved out of the picture by his super amazing, intelligent sister. And
Wife.
sister wife. And he forced her into exile because by this point, he had started making some friends with some people in the military. So she got put into exile in order to be spared death. But during this time, there was also some civil unrest happening in Rome between Pompey and Caesar. Pompey was once a dear friend and ally of Cleopatra's now deceased father, and he came to Egypt in hopes of getting some help from the throne. But Ptolemy the 13th thought that he may try to help Cleopatra get out of exile since they were very close. When Pompey showed up at the door, Ptolemy the 13th's advisor, Theodotus, suggested that they have him killed. So Ptolemy the 13th had Pompey beheaded, which was a crushing blow to Cleopatra and probably to Pompey as well.
Yeah. Damn.
thought they were friends, and like now I have no
Was
head.
it the worst thing to happen to Pompeii? Maybe not. But
Pompey the person.
Pompey
Yes.
the person, yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
But I thought maybe he.
Personally, he found that very offensive. Holy shit.
Caesar ended up coming to Egypt as well, and he didn't actually love this act of brutality that happened against Pompey.
No?
And was said to have cried at the sight of this beheading, because before this feud
Were they
started happening
friends?
between, but before the feud started happening between Pompey and Caesar, Pompey had actually been Caesar's son-in-law and ally at one time.
Okay.
So Caesar had Theodotus killed because he was the one that advised Ptolemy the 13th to kill
It's just-
Pompey.
They're just so quick to murder. It's
Oh, yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
And
Eye
he
for an
just
eye.
kind of, and he just kind of took over the palace from Ptolemy the 13th and demanded that
Caesar?
both him, and demanded that both him and his sister come and speak with him. Well, Ptolemy
Over
the
a nice salad.
Yeah.
Which the name escapes me of what salad it could be. Sorry. So stupid. I'm so sorry.
I love your dad jokes. On drink time. We're all taking drinks.
Sorry.
So Ptolemy the 13th was kind of like, who the fuck is this general that thinks he can just come in and demand royalty's presence? And Cleopatra's like, I need to get there ASAP before my brother says some stupid shit about me, and I need to plead my case. So Cleopatra gets help from a family friend named Apollodorus, and he gets her in a boat and takes her close to the palace to the eastern harbor, which is lit by a famous 400-foot lighthouse, which we should totally cover at some point. It's in the next photo there, our
Yes.
artist rendition, because
Ooh.
it's,
Also,
it's gone
did
now.
you,
Is this the first
oh my God.
lighthouse?
That's a
massive.
good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Stay tuned for our next case, and we cover the lighthouse, and
When
I'll
we
answer that
answer this
question,
question.
for you.
Okay, there we
Okay.
go.
We're
not giving
was-
away anything early. You have to wait.
Where was Cleopatra during her exile? Did you say
So
that already?
she was kind of like over more to another area. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but like it was really hard for her to get back to Egypt because there was this land. Alexandria was very well protected. First of all, it was covered. It was on the shore. So they could see everybody that was coming in, as well as there was like this marshland in between other areas where people would die if they tried to walk through it. It was like marsh and bugs and like all kinds of animals and stuff like that. So it wasn't easy for her to get there. That's why she had to get there by boat, which is what Apollodorus did for her. So they get into this harbor. They see the seventh wonder of the ancient world, which is the lighthouse. And he puts her in a rug sack when they get into the harbor. So it kind of tells you that she must have been a petite woman, and walks her all the way into the room where Caesar was staying in this rug sack.
unrolls her like a,
Sneaks her
like a
in.
magic
I think
trick.
I have heard
So,
of this. This is
There
pretty cool.
is a, I think it was, who was it that wrote? I forget they said it. Somebody did say that she was in an actual carpet and rolled out, but she was likely just in like a little sack, like that would normally carry like clothing and gold pieces and stuff like that.
It's just still really weird to imagine.
Yeah. So Caesar was not an easy man to surprise. In fact, he was known for showing up places before they could even introduce him. He was just kind
Power
of one of
move.
those, power move
Yeah.
coming in. So I would actually love to know what this man's reaction was to seeing her, but it's not clear whether she was like unraveled in front of him or whether she was kind of like already in the room when he came back to the room. Anyways, yeah, like I said, some places it said that she rolled up in a carpet in the scantily clad clothing. But if you go to the next photo, it was more likely that she was in a long sleeveless tunic with a broad ribbon called a diadem that denoted her being a Hellenistic ruler. So, not so scantily clad.
The
just
outfit
in-
looks
in
great.
dressing.
I imagine back then it's like it's not, like today where we all have seen pictures of, political figures or whatever. So you have to be identified somehow.
Yes. And so that's how they would have been, right? Is by this, they were the only ones that were allowed to wear these pieces around their head. So she was able to plead her case to Caesar, and he saw a very well-spoken, well-read young ruler. And he also saw likely that his allegiance to her, this young woman who was thrown into exile by her brother, would probably be seen better by the Romans than an alliance with a young, foolish 13-year-old who had a fellow Roman beheaded.
I forgot. So he's 13.
13 at this time.
And he's like, kill that man.
Yeah. So she's 21 and he's 13. So they struck up a deal to have her put back into the throne and for P13 to kind of like not be the one that's leading
Not
things
be a
anymore.
child ruler.
Rounded with no Xbox.
Sorry, I wrote him
Exactly.
down as P13 in my notes, but I mean Ptolemy the 13th. That's just easier than saying that every time.
That's way easier. Yeah.
Full house cookie.
So
And who wants a 13-year-old ruling anything?
no
I
one.
can't think of anything worse.
Which is
Yeah.
why likely that
Coming into puberty,
Ptolemy the
like
12th,
you are not in a good state of mind.
Hormones are just raging through you.
I just want to play video games.
Exactly.
Ptolemy the 12th that's likely the reason why, you know, he was getting older and was like, I'm going to make sure that like my daughter is also in charge here because she was, well, first of all, brilliant. Even at
Yes.
such a young age, she was learning all these things. But yeah, that's likely why, because his other kids were younger. So they struck up this deal, but Ptolemy the 13th didn't like this and still had the army at his fingertips. So he had them just kind of stuck in the palace as his army surrounded the palace. So
An
Cleopatra
army was listening
and-
to a 13-year-old.
well,
Well, they
yes, they
have
already
to.
were. They already put Cleopatra in exile. He had made friends with them and they were
Right.
doing whatever he said. Like, what are you going to do? He's a
Yeah.
ruler. They're going to listen to him, right? So what had happened was that before this, Caesar had already called for reinforcements, like when he got there, especially once he saw that Pompey was beheaded. So he had reinforcements coming and they knew that they just kind of had to sit it out. So while they were there, you know, they started to create kind of a more personal relationship as well, not just like a very, you know, ruler on ruler relationship. There was a little bit more. And it was 6 months before Caesar's army was actually able to make it there. Well, they're traveling by like boats and walking.
But they
and-
were in the palace on lockdown
Yeah.
for 6 months.
for 6 months.
I forget how slow things were. So they were quick
Yeah.
to kill, and everything else was like, you just wait.
We'll figure it out.
6 months from now,
Yeah.
you'll be sorry.
So his army came over. The siege happened. Ptolemy the 13th drowned in the river. So like, bye-bye, brother. You're no longer a worry of mine.
I don't
Cleopatra was
condone
pregnant.
killing kids.
So he wasn't
Oh,
good at
and-
swimming
No.
either.
And Caesar stayed for up to a year after this and toured Egypt with Cleopatra and what I'm assuming is their young child by some point. Now, when
Damn.
Cleopatra met Caesar, who was 52 years old, she was likely a virgin, given that she was only 21 years old and the fact that her previous husband had been her prepubescent husband. Brother. There wasn't probably a
Well,
whole
both.
lot going on there. And
Both.
was in exile. Yeah. Both.
Yeah.
But of course, Caesar's wife was scorned at the time and didn't want to paint a pretty picture of this woman. So she was mainly described by Romans as a harlot queen who, you know, seduced her husband.
Now, to be fair, if any man ever wrongs you guys, then yeah, like he's an asshole, any woman involved, they're a bitch. Like that's just what friends do. So I get it. I get
Yeah.
it.
And also Rome was kind of like, you know, but
like-
their son, Caesarion, was publicly known to be his child. He was not keeping it hidden from anybody.
I forgot like cesarean.
Yeah.
I think about
A
literally
C-section.
Cesarean.
Yeah, cesarean.
So he was publicly known to be Caesar's son, but he was never going to be heir to the throne in Rome. But he was learning to become a pharaoh of Egypt. Now,
I don't know any of this stuff. Like this is insane.
yeah, I'm going to kind of gloss over the rest of this history because there is a shit ton that goes down.
Okay.
But just read the book. It's amazing. And it goes into this a lot more in depth.
Yeah.
So in 46
this is
BC
fascinating.
It is. It's so good. And I'm not even at the tomb yet. I'm not even
Oh
at
my
the point of this yet. In 46 BCE, she finally became queen, as in she kind of got rid of all the people around her that might not be on her side. There was no other family members that were going to try and take the throne from her because her sister was somewhere else. At some point, she marries her younger brother again, her even younger brother, because, you know, it's customary and Caesar's somewhere else. They're not married. But then something happens to him. I can't remember what. At this point, she starts to become known as the incarnation of goddess Isis, who was the goddess of healing and magic, and her name translates to Queen of the Throne. In Hellenistic times, Isis was a pretty universal deity as well, so this proved to be very fruitful to her when she was conducting business, because it wasn't just in Egypt that people celebrated Isis, it was kind of everywhere.
Okay.
So She was the first in the Ptolemaic family to actually care for the Egyptians and make rulings and decisions to help them, as well as to help the Greeks. So
she's the first. That's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. They're like, oh, you
She's the
actually
first one to
care
give a shit.
little bit?
Exactly.
We're not used to this.
Wait, what? So she got rid of a lot of corruption in the kingdom. And Egypt actually provided most of the grain for the Roman Empire at this time. And she knew that they had a strong hand because of this, as well as she knew that she had to protect that at all costs. And she did. She was ruling during 2 droughts and was able to get them through it and still come out on top. So this woman was smart. Caesar was eventually murdered in 44 BCE, and Marcus Antonius, Mark Antony, Caesar's
J-Lo's
ex-husband.
Yeah.
Caesar's close friend and fellow politician took over a lot of the eastern land that shared borders on either side of Egypt, while Octavian, Caesar's nephew/adopted son, took over control of the west. So, story says Mark Antony and Cleopatra met and immediately fell in love. You can see them in the next photo. But truthfully, even though Mark Antony got around quite a bit, Mark Antony needed funds from Egypt to start a conquest against Parthia, which was an Iranian powerhouse that Rome had already had a big loss to recently. Since a lot of stories come from Octavian and Caesar being seen as the good guys, the next decade or so of Cleo's life is kind of very glossed over and as just some torrid love affair with Mark Antony, where she's solely to blame for his downfall. But during this decade, what was actually happening, it's always the woman's fault. During this decade, her reign was actually just doing quite well. She had made lots of strategic friends and her empire was prosperous. No scandals to write about, so she was kind of just boring and left out of the history books at the time. Mark Antony was going to be starting his campaign against Parthia, and when he won, she would control all of the East, and they had already started minting coins with Mark Antony and Cleopatra's face on them.
That's so cute.
Mark Antony even took part in a ceremony where he became known as Osiris, god of the underworld and important for the cycle of the Nile River flooding. Osiris and Isis were both brother and sister who were said to have been in love even in the womb. So this, just solidified even more that Mark Antony and Cleopatra were a power couple in many ways. Mm-hmm. Mark Antony eventually lost the Parthian raid, and Octavian started to see that maybe he had some power moves to make here. And he went as far as to send over his army and Mark Antony's legal Roman wife, Octavia, as a message to send.
Awkward.
But Mark Antony, Cleopatra, their 3 kids, and Cleo's son Caesarion would have festivals celebrating their strength, and that Cleopatra was the queen of kings, kind of sticking it to Octavian that Caesarion is likely the rightful heir to the Roman throne.
Okay.
So their 3 children of her and Mark Antony were also given different areas over the east to rule. So they kind of just owned all of the eastern side of and either side of Egypt at this time. But eventually Octavian became too strong and started to majorly defeat the Egyptian rule, and Mark Antony became a blubbering mess as his soldiers were constantly defecting to Octavian, and Cleopatra had to not only console him but also had to continue fighting to the bitter end to regain her empire's strength. It is said that after Mark Antony died that she likely killed herself by snakebite in sadness and love and loss. But the truth is, she killed herself after Octavian captured her and said that he wanted to parade her as a trophy in his victor's parade.
Oh, I'd kill myself too.
So she was like,
I'd rather die.
Well, she was like, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me slowly and it's not going to be good. So, she likely didn't die through snakebite either, because that would have been painful as fuck. And if you remember from earlier, they were really good at poisoning people. So she likely just got some regular poison that would have put her to sleep. And in 30 BCE, the Macedonian Empire ended in Egypt.
But Damien already knew that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How old was she when she died?
Yeah.
So she was born in 69 and died in 30. So she was, what does that make her? 28? 30. 39.
So she'd be
We'll never know.
39. Yeah.
Yeah,
Almost.
she was young.
Almost 40.
That's
yeah.
very young. But she did
Yeah.
a lot. Oh my God.
She did a shit ton, and she was way more than just some seductress, which is, like I said, most people, just try and gloss her. She she was a ruler and she knew how to rule, and she was fucking smart, and she spoke 10 languages. In fact, one of the languages that they said that she spoke was literally just something where you make noises in different inflections. Like she learned how to speak all these different languages.
That's freaking cool. Wow. Okay. I didn't know any of that.
So let's get to the missing tombs. All
Here
the
we go.
tombs from Alexander Great, the 14 Ptolemies, and Cleopatra and Mark Antony's are all lost.
Yes.
The
Wow.
Portus Magnus, which is where the lighthouse stood, and much of Alexandria was lost to sea over the years due to floods, tidal waves, earthquakes, and tsunami. An earthquake in 1303 CE actually gave the final blow to the lighthouse of Alexandria. Fun fact, though, Ptolemy I stole Alexander the Great's body when it was on its way to be buried. I've seen two things. It was either on its way to be buried in Memphis, Egypt, or on its way to be buried in Macedonia. But he wanted to make sure that there would be like something there to say, hey, no, like we earned this. So he stole the body. Alexandria had one of the most sophisticated water systems in the world. It had all these underground water systems that would lead the Nile and the fresh water directly into the city to help with grain and to help people to have fresh water to be able to survive. So Ptolemy I started this construction into Alexandria, and this helped them with their crops. Ptolemy I also was very rich from previous conquests and now controlled all of Egypt's wealth, which was very wealthy when Alexander the Great took it over. So he had a major tourist attraction built. That was the tomb of Alexander the Great. And he also built temples, public bathhouses, gymnasiums, the library, and the lighthouse. So it was a place to be absolutely reckoned with. Alexandria's history right up until 1950 is actually really interesting, but I'm going to leave it at that because I think I've already told you enough about the history, but there's some really great articles by the Smithsonian, which will also be linked on our website. One is called Raising Alexandria, and it gets more into depth kind of what happened over the years and how we get to this point. But basically for years, stone and marble pillars had been put into the water to help reinforce breaker walls, and this was crushing some of the artifacts that were under there. A French archaeologist named Jean-Yves Impieux, I think it is, and cinematographer Asma El-Bakri went for a swim in the area because the area once used to be closed off, and they went underwater and they found like these breathtaking statues and like columns and buildings. So they pled with the government to stop doing this, and luckily they were successful and they stopped dumping things into the water.
Yeah, it's a historical site. So
my God.
Yeah, but like, so if you look at the article, it goes into tell why this happened. A lot of that area lost a lot of its money, and once it got money again, they were just more focused on rebuilding, not on actually searching the area. So a lot of Alexandria that survived had been built over, but in 1992, Frank Godito, with the backing of the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, began surveying the area and made many, many discoveries in this 400-hectare area. So it's pretty recent that they've even started to discover any of this. They discovered like the royal quarters. And if you go into the next three photos, these are just some of them. If you go to the website there, which is also going to be linked on our website, they have like a whole series of photos of underwater stuff that they found. So the first one is a sphinx with Ptolemy the 12th face on it. The second one is an Isis priest holding a jar for Osiris. And another is a sphinx from the Alexander Harbor.
It's just so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Yes, and these are all underwater for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes. Like thousands.
Math. Long time.
When Godito came in, he was able to ascertain that most of Alexandria was actually intact underwater. So it's almost as if it just kind of just like slid in over time. So that was
at least it didn't
cool.
fall apart.
Yes, that's very true. So next, our woman of the hour. In 2005, Dr. Kathleen Martinez, which is the next photo there, she is a former Dominican lawyer turned archaeologist, started her search for Cleopatra's tomb and obviously everybody else's tomb that's missing at the same time. There was actually a National Geographic episode on her called Cleopatra's Lost Tomb, which I watched and it was really good. But after that, we didn't hear much until recently. And there have been
how
some
recent?
big breakthroughs. On February 13th, 2024, she updated
Whoa.
what she found in the last 2 years. And I got this
Okay.
rundown from a TikTok called Till Science by Dr. Harnini Bhatt. She actually did a podcast interview with Dr. Martinez as well.
Oh, cool.
You have to pay for that one, but honestly, I might because it's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, what does that show? Tia, oh my God, she was in True Lies, and then she was in Wayne's World, and she had her show where she is like the super hot, like Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I know who
So
you're
it's
talking
kind
about.
it's kind of giving me that energy
Yeah.
because she's a freaking amazing lawyer. Now she's like a treasure hunter.
So in the National Geographic, it went on to say that she always had this fascination with Cleopatra, but her parents were like, no, you can't be an architect. So that's why she became a lawyer, but that never really left her. And that's why she
so
ended up
freaking
getting
good
back
for
into
her.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very well accomplished.
Yeah. So
And not that it matters too. She's also gorgeous. I just
Oh,
want to say.
she is.
Yes.
I know. So I just want to say, like, thanks to that Dr. Harnini Bhatt, which I hope I'm saying your name right, because she got the rundown because it was actually in Spanish and she got it translated into English.
¿Te hablas español?
No, I don't speak a word of it. So, so most of the following information comes from a mix of like her and the National Geographic episode. So Dr. Martinez believes that the Taposiris Magna Temple, which is about 50 kilometers away from Alexandria, is most likely to hold these tombs. This was a temple that was dedicated to the goddess Isis and served as a place of worship. So the next photo was kind of what's left over of this temple.
In order that much, huh?
No.
Yeah.
In order to prove this, though, she needed to find a foundation plate or tablet. And a foundation tablet is normally placed underneath a major structural stone that will have information on it with when the temple was built, whom it was built by,
Like a time
and why.
capsule type
That's
thing.
kind of neat.
I guess it was just something that they did back then. They were like, just so you know, this is why this was built. Underneath like a
wow.
foundational plate. So underneath a foundational blah 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 blah.
Jalapeno?
Underneath, what was I trying to say?
I don't know.
A
Yeah,
major
like-
like structural part of it.
Structure.
Anyways,
Yeah.
structural stone. Oh my god,
Structure stone.
that was
We know
fun.
what you're talking about.
Yes.
I don't have any
didn't,
better
so I'm
words to
glad.
offer. I would.
So this has actually been searched for since 1801 when Napoleon ordered it to start being searched for. Which is
Oh my
crazy.
God.
Wow.
So Dr. Martinez and her team excavated the temple, or what was left of it, and found another temple right beside it. And they found an offering table with 500 coins with writing that said Queen Cleopatra on one side and a picture of her on the other. So the next picture is a
Sounds
photo
promising.
of Dr. Yes.
That's
it's a
so
photo of Dr.
cool.
Martinez holding one of the coins.
Can't
They
really
found
tell
a
what she looks like.
processional avenue, which was normally used to hold celebrations, religious processions, and other things that extended through this temple right into the Mediterranean Sea. So the next photo is of the tunnel that they found.
Whoa.
So
That
at this point,
It's really cool.
right? At this point, Dr. Martinez and her team wanted to move the focus to looking into the ocean because, like, well, duh. But the French international scientific community was like, we need more evidence. So she was
How
like,
much more do you need?
all right, bet.
For all
And-
you Gen Z out there.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be hip and cool. I'm hip.
It's working.
with
I
it.
mean, I wouldn't know though.
Is that a Dr. Evil reference? Okay,
Maybe.
just to drive home how millennial we are.
So they go back to the temple and they freaking find the plate.
That's freaking cool,
It's
man.
very delicate.
Wow.
It's made of clay, glass, and semi-precious stones. Remember, this plate has been being looked for since 180-1.
I'm
So if
shocked
you
it
go-
actually exists.
If
So
you go to
like
the
that
next
is incredible.
photo, written on it in both
Whoa.
Greek and Lindsay, how do you say it? Hieroglyphics?
Hieroglyphics.
Yes. It says, the king of High and Low Egypt, Ptolemy V, lives forever, beloved by Isis, son of Ptolemy IV, king of High and Low Egypt, and his wife Arsinoe III, both benevolent gods, consecrated this temple to the mother Isis.
This looks like
So,
it
like,
was like
mic drop.
This is the actual one.
Yeah.
This
looks
this is the
looks
plate.
like it was
not old.
it doesn't look, it looks like it was photoshopped or
laser printed.
No, that's
Yeah,
the actual
or-
piece. So it's in the video. You can go and find it.
How the frick did they even do
Okay,
that?
It was
under,
so it's like literally in the wall, in between stones. That's what I mean by a foundational stone.
But just the actual writing looks like,
Well, I mean, they
It's
clean
hard to
things
believe.
up. It's just like finding a dinosaur bone. You're not like, hey, look at this
so
dinosaur
they're
bone.
like
You clean it
this
up.
image is emphasizing what was there. It's not
okay, that makes sense.
okay.
This piece is so freaking cool.
Yeah. So it was like broken up into pieces too. They had to put it together.
Yeah, I can see that here.
I can just tell that like some of the fonts have been almost like
Probably enhanced a little bit to make it.
okay,
just to help you read it.
Yeah.
okay, just making sure.
So this temple was founded then in 2010 BCE and functioned until the 4th century CE. So this was like concrete evidence that this temple was dedicated to Isis. And if you remember, who was Isis reincarnate?
Cleopatra. Like the one that we're talking
Correct.
about, right?
Yeah. But what's interesting about
And Osiris
Temposaurus-
was her partner, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What's interesting about Temposaurus magna is that there are 0 ancient maps that reference it. This is believed to be for one of 2 reasons. Either A, it was intentionally left off to protect Cleopatra's tomb, just like erased by the priests that loved her because she loved this temple. Or B, Romans came to find the tomb after they got wind of her death and just completely destroyed the temples. Now, they found this. Dr. Martinez can go back and be like, okay, so can we go looking now? And her main hypothesis is that the tunnel will lead to another temple, which is currently to the open sea. And this is because typically temples were built in 2s. They were built one dedicated to the female god and one to the male god. So we know for sure that we have a temple that is dedicated to a female god. We have Temposaurus magna, which is to Osiris. So we need to find the rest of the other temple to Isis. Her theory is that there's so much of Alexandria could be lost to the sea that why couldn't some of Temposaurus magna also be lost? And after all, we don't really have maps of the time. So she gets to work with some cartographers to look at ancient maps to see if there's any evidence of this. And lo and behold, go to the next photo. This is a map made by Abraham Ortelius from 1595, and it shows a peninsula 45 kilometers away from Temposaurus magna, which could be some sort of port or island that would now be submerged underwater.
That's crazy, though.
Yes.
Like,
Wait,
so what does Dr.
Is
Martinez
it little
do
island
next?
on that map? Like that's
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to tell because it's like all in different language, but I think it's that little yellow part that goes out there.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So she sends a little email. Enter Robert Ballard. Anybody recognize this name? Maybe
Yes,
Lindsay?
the guy who found
Yeah.
the Titanic.
Yeah. So I'm not
Not
going to get into
James
too much about
Cameron.
him. Not James Cameron.
Not James Cameron.
So I'm
Sorry,
not going to get
James.
into this too much because I know we're going to cover the Titanic, but his story is absolutely amazing. And so she reached out to him because her team's not good at subaquatic archaeology. And so she's like, well, who's good at it? She's like, this guy is. And the 80-year-old who's contemplating retirement saw a lot of similarities in their stories and their journey. And so he was like, all right, this is going to be my final project. So
again,
he
it's
starts
like the
helping
movie
them.
is writing itself. It's like,
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm in
So
Wait,
James,
wait,
you
wait,
can
retirement.
come in now.
Just wait. This is about to get so good for what happens. So,
I mean, it's already so good.
yeah, in September of 2023, the Egyptian government opened up the military area for the first time to the public in order for Dr. Martinez and her team to explore it. And the
Wow.
Marines are like, hey, here's all of our equipment to use. If you need us, let us know. We're right here. Because like they're obviously excited about this.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Now, normally you are given 2 months. They were given 14 days, which is like nothing.
Why?
What?
To search for evidence just right off the coast there of where they were looking. I don't know exactly why they were only given 14 days. I think it's probably more outlined in the podcast itself. But anyways, they were only given 14 days. They're starting to search, though, and everything is covered in sediment. So they can't see anything during this dive, which is obviously very disheartening. They have to find something in order to be able to get another permit. A big 3-day storm comes in on day 10. This is the biggest storm in 15 years. The storm clears on day 14. This is their last day. They got to go in. They got to find something. And I shit you not, this storm removed all of the sediment and they were finally able to see stuff. If Cleopatra is not making this happen, I don't know who is. Cleopatra is leading this woman here. Okay? So they go underneath there. They start finding structures that are not natural. Some are made of basalt, which is not a naturally occurring mineral in the ocean. And it was used in the building of Temposaurus Magna.
Wait, that makes
they
me
found
surprised,
a tunnel.
though.
They find the rest of the tunnel.
That's freaking
okay.
And
Wow.
limestone blocks and things that don't even look like it should be natural. And it looks like it goes even further than they originally thought.
So it's definitely man-made.
Yes, it's definitely man-made. So they'll need to return on the next permit. Initially, they thought it was only going to be about 4 kilometers, but they found enough evidence that it could be up to 10 kilometers that it goes out for. And on the next permit, they will be able to actually excavate, not just dive. And we may have some updates soon because next permit season is May of 2024.
That's right now.
That's right now.
Oh,
So
I really hope they get to go back. Obviously, I think she's on it, right? Like this is
Lindsay,
huge.
you make an alert. You make an alert right now.
I actually have
for
Lost
all-
at Sea as an alert, so maybe
Okay,
but
good.
I
There
think
we
we should
go.
put Cleopatra as an alert.
Yes, Cleopatra.
and maybe the last name Martinez, maybe, or Egypt
Yes.
even.
I'll put
So-
those on alert.
Okay.
So
Well, the tombs have not been discovered yet. We might be closer than ever.
wow.
This is so cool.
Yes.
God, I want to
Incredible.
watch this movie. I might have to watch either The Mummy or Sahara right now.
Although I'd be wondering, like, in the ocean, what would things look like at this point after?
Well, the thing
Such
is that likely they
centuries
won't
and-
find a body. Like, it's probably not likely that the actual,
Yeah.
unless they were
Although
like
if anyone's
super
going to
well
preserve
enclosed,
something, I would
it's the
I would put on
Egyptians.
the Egyptians. So
Yeah, that's very fair.
And also maybe the way it was built, there's like weird ancient air pockets and some things are dry, kind of like in Indiana Jones. Remember when they go under the
Yes.
ground and then of course he causes a flood, but whatever.
Of
It's
course,
neither here
yes.
nor there.
yeah.
I
think
also forgot
part of,
that oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, part of the mummification process is putting salt on the body. Maybe the salt water.
Oh, it would preserve it even
I don't
more.
know. Maybe.
Well, I mean, at the
Salt.
very least, they're
Maybe.
likely going to be able to find evidence, because obviously things were buried with them a lot of times. And there was always some sort of like annotation of who it was. And if they celebrated Cleopatra as much as they did,
definitely would. It's not that they
yes,
would.
likelihood there was some definite things that would tell you who they actually were. And I forgot to mention before, the last photo there actually. So there were another reason why she believes so adamantly that this is true is because the temple Temposaurus Magna is almost like an identical copy of these other temples that are in the south in Aswan, Egypt. So that's what that photo is of. This is actually the one that was dedicated to the goddess Isis that is still around.
Beautiful.
There was
It
two
is.
that was built on this island. One is now submerged underwater, which is the one that was dedicated to Osiris, but this one was dedicated to Isis. So it's just more kind of evidence to show there has to be two. There's no way that there's just one. And so that's why she's continuing to look into the sea. She's like, it has to be there.
And is it under the water? I know you said, is it like a landslide situation?
So it was earthquakes, it was tidal waves, there was a tsunami. So there was lots of kind of natural
So it just
disasters
kind of
that happened. It's right
affected
on the
the
coast.
land.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I just find that so hard to imagine a piece of land just kind of shifting underwater. No, that's not how it works, but that's in my brain.
Yeah.
That's how it sounds.
Understandable.
Yeah. I mean, things
Anyways.
like land and coastlines have changed over this is thousands of years.
Yes.
So
yes.
it makes sense. And I think also at that time they didn't want public knowledge of where their pharaohs were buried, right? Because they didn't want people to grave rob because they
and
knew
and
they're buried with
steal-
all their riches and
Yeah, so it was it's a lot of times, yes, like you said, it was very strategic. They didn't want the Romans to find where her body was because they thought that they were gonna like basically, yes, desecrate it and things like that. So it was
that too.
the likelihood is that's why I said it's either they believe that it was either wiped off the maps intentionally or that the Romans came in and just like fucked these temples up.
Well, oh my God, I would be so happy to hear any kind of update.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
so
like-
excited to hear more.
I know.
I hope you
I
can,
almost
like,
was
give
like,
us an
should I
update later.
wait? But
No,
I mean,
I
it's
don't
not,
wait.
it's not likely to happen like overnight
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah, I'm
They-
really glad you share this now because since you mentioned it, I had no idea that her
I
tomb
didn't
could
know
possibly
any
be
of
at
this.
sea.
Like, oh, this is
Yeah.
so good. Such a cool story.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that I
Yeah.
didn't like look into this because you had mentioned it and I could have
thank you.
just because I'm curious, but didn't do
Yeah.
anything. I still feel
Read
like
the
I have so
book.
much to learn.
Read the book. Oh my God, it was so good.
We're going to link
Yes.
that then. So yeah,
Yes.
we can.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
I'll
Like,
check
I
it
swear I
out.
got a lot of my information from. So
I
want
to read it. Like, and I learned so much about Cleopatra just in general, Chantel. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I just, it's one of those people in history that you like kind of think you know because you've heard of her, but you really don't. So
Yeah,
Because
her
there's a
name is thrown
movie.
around so much,
yeah,
which I
Yeah.
also have not seen. But there's so many famous characters that just are kind of dropped, and then I know next to nothing. I just feel like I do know them because you hear their name so often, but I don't know any depth. So this is awesome.
It was funny. I saw something that said that Elizabeth, what was it? Cleopatra is about as Egyptian as Elizabeth Taylor was.
That's funny.
That's fair though.
yeah.
Well, and again, I didn't know that at all. I know that a lot of white actors play non-white actors, etc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially back in the day.
I mean,
the
still
likelihood
kind
is
of
is
now,
that even
but-
Greek Macedonians sometimes are of darker complexion. So the
Well, like
likelihood is that she was
Damien.
still
It means all of the
way more
but it's
tanned
just-
than a lot of times that she was shown to be. But yeah, it's anyways. It's all-
I just did not know I would be learning so much on this show. So I'm very happy.
Yeah,
Damien's
I
probably
really-
like, yeah, I knew all this. No big deal.
well, even myself, like I knew very little, and I knew that like I was like, okay, I got to cover the tomb because it's lost at sea, and that's really cool. And like, what happened to Alexandria? But then the more that I learned about how Cleopatra, there was basically like a Roman smear campaign against her. I was like, okay, we got to do this woman right.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I think that you helped. You helped Dr. Martinez for sure.
we got to tag
Yes.
her. Hopefully, she'll watch this.
I mean, she did a lot more. She did
Yeah,
a ton more.
she did way more.
She's doing all the heavy lifting.
yeah,
Yes, and we're really interested in what she does next. So
yes,
exactly.
100%.
Get us those
I-
updates.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh my God.
We
All
will
the luck
definitely
to
be doing
her
the
and her
updates.
team.
Yeah.
Freaking unreal.
Also, her
I feel
job
so
is
invested
so
now.
cool.
And thanks, Robert,
So
as well.
cool.
Robert Ballard
Yes.
for getting in there and
Yeah.
being like, yeah, I'll do this.
He's like,
Robert,
yeah,
we're not done with
Discovery
him.
Things is kind of my jam. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
I like how he was like, should I retire? And then he's like, oh, wait. I'll do
I
that.
feel like people like that.
Yes, I can do this.
yeah.
People like
too.
that do not retire. Their
Yeah.
brains are just wired different, and they're always exploring. Always.
Yeah.
And thank God for them because our
Yes.
world would be a lot less interesting.
And our podcast would have a
Exactly.
lot less information.
Correct.
Yeah, this is the Explorers podcast.
Yeah. Here we go.
Freaking awesome. Well, that was great.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you, Chantal.
I'm so happy I
learned a
finally
lot,
got to present
and
this.
Now I have a cliffhanger, so I'm a little upset about that. But
Yes.
Yes.
I want to
We
learn
all
more.
do.
So please update us.
Also, someone make this movie, please, and
I know.
give them all the money
James?
so they can.
When I
James Cameron.
heard about the storm, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, nothing more. And what was it? They said apparently, I don't know if this is like truth or not. Cleopatra said, no man will ever find my tomb. And they were like, was that because she meant only a woman would?
will.
Now, if I
She's
was
like,
watching
all right, I'll
the
help
movie,
you
I'd be like,
out,
oh, come
Dr.
on.
Martinez. Yeah.
You know what? It's kind of like the scene in Wonder Woman where they're like, this is no man's land. She's like, I am no man. I was like, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cheesy, but I love it.
Also,
Yeah.
like the whole storm coming in, the worst storm in 15
It's
days. It like
perfect.
does seem like such a trope for a movie. And you're like,
I know.
oh, if you were watching this, you would be like, come on.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's not going to, yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
a perfect movie opportunity. So
really
once we know a
is.
little
I
more,
wanna watch it.
probably bring it all together. We can.
Wait, is this like our third movie idea now?
No, it's
This
like our
week?
10th.
Oh my God,
Okay,
so
so like
many.
this week.
Yeah. James
this
Cameron
weekend,
owes
maybe.
us a ton of money for all these ideas.
He does actually.
We're going to put out alerts for all these ideas. And if any of these ideas get made, we know it's James Cameron, and that's it. No one
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Then we know he's listening.
That's
Well,
very
that was
true.
awesome. So
Thanks.
what a way to kickstart the weekend.
Yeah, it is. Well, for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I mean,
And for
Yeah,
anybody
sorry.
that listens
We're-
to this episode on a Friday.
Yes. I know we come out on a Wednesday and you're probably anxious to listen. So you're listening on a Wednesday. But if you're
100%.
listening
You're
on a
ready
Friday,
at 5 a.m. as soon as it comes out to hit that play button.
but also look at it like this. In most recent years, Thursday is now like a sexy pre-weekend. So if you're listening on Wednesday, it's like the Friday of the
Thursday,
pre-weekend.
which is of the pre-weekend. So
So
Or we
The
can just
weekend
be
start
getting
on
you through
Wednesday.
that hump day, one or the other. We're making your hump day better.
yeah, and we're rambling, which we know you love.
Love it. Okay, well, subscribe, and I love you all.
Watch us on YouTube.
Yes.
Like this podcast. Tell all of your friends and tell your enemies. Tell everyone, please.
Yeah, we
And
don't care.
Thank you so much for listening.
anyone who wants to listen, bring them.
Anyone that has ears.
Yes. Even if
Or
you don't
eyes,
have ears.
because of YouTube.
Yes. And you could actually, the transcript is available if you listen on Apple Podcasts.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do
You
not
really
need
have
ears.
you have
You have no
excuse.
excuse.
We can get it done in Braille if we need to.
Yeah, I'm learning sign language, so I
Oh my
one day will translate for us while we're presenting.
Okay, well, I'm
Perfect.
going to go learn how to write Braille, so I got to go. So I love you guys. Bye.
Okay,
Bye,
love
everyone.
you. Bye.
Thank you for listening today. We loved having you. If you liked the episode, share with your friends, family, or anyone who would enjoy it. Also, take a minute to review the Coast Files podcast on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Leaving us a comment or like really helps. You can email us at coastfilespod@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at coastfilespod, or visit our website at www.coastfiles.com. You can find the sources for today's episode on our website. See you next week with a new episode.